Hey folks, my name is Josh Hageman and I'm with you for Fluid Backstage 2014. Today, our guest is none other than David Nasser, all the way from Burmingham, Alabama. He's written 4 books. He's the senior pastor of an incredible church. And buddy, it's my pleasure just to welcome you and share a little bit about who you are and what your heart is for ministry. So to start this off, just why don't you just give us a brief background of what you do, where you're at, and why you're in this freezing country today.
Well, first of all, man, it is good to be back in Canada. I love the country of Canada. We came to the United States as a refugee family from Iran when I was 9 years old, and I always kid around and say, man, we should have come to Canada. Like, are you kidding me? It's like America, but nicer, less crime, better stuff, better fashion. Are you kidding me? So I feel like I'm coming home when I come to Canada. But yeah, I'm here obviously for this incredible conference, and just an honor to get to be a part of what God is doing, you know, through just this incredible movement. And yeah, I'm a pastor in Alabama. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and it's about 64 degrees today. And
I'll take it.
we about 3.5, 4 years ago, we planted a church, an inner city church in the inner city of Birmingham. People kind of know Birmingham as Bombingham. It's a lot of civil rights history in our city. This is where Martin Luther was prisoned when he wrote the letters from a prison jail, and the Civil Rights Museum is in Birmingham for good reason. There's a lot of civil rights strife in our city, and our city still continues to struggle with segregation, and not just racially, but economically and everything. There's a great divide in our city. And about 97% of the churches that have been planted in our city in the last 10 years have been really in the soccer mom side of town. They've been really in the projected growth side of town. We love those churches, but we felt called to the more broken places in our city where most church plants weren't going. And so about 3.5 years ago, we went to the inner city of Birmingham, and we are right in the middle of where the meth labs are, and right in the middle of where the project housing is, and right in the middle of where gang activity about 5:30 starts cranking up bullets, and our little church is a great place in that between Sundays. Sundays are just a time where we come to celebrate what God's done between Sundays. And between Sundays, we do everything from after-school tutoring to feeding the people in our community to, using GED class, just education and medication and all these different ways just to reach people with the gospel. So yeah, I'm a pastor, but I also travel quite a bit and speak as well. And so, yeah, good to be here.
Awesome. Like I said, it's great to have you. One of the questions that this young adult generation is facing, and it's a challenging question, I've asked this on occasion beforehand, is relative to the call of God on their lives. And I'll ask you personally, and maybe you can shed some light on how you received the call of God on your life and how that transpired to where you are today.
Sure, Josh. Well, man, for me, and I know that there's one call on the life of people, but God is obviously diverse in the way that He calls different people. I mean, you ask people their moment when they were called, and some people can actually recall that moment. For some people, it kind of came as it was a little bit more ambiguously strong than it was just an 18-wheeler hit me, as a calling. But for me, man, I was 18 years old when I became a Christian. Actually, 18 and 2 months old the night that I became a Christian, and I came from a pretty rough road. I was from Iran. We saw the Iranian Revolution happen in my country when I was 9. So I saw religion gone wrong. So I wanted to have nothing to do with religion. We escaped from, in my mind, when I was 9 years old, when we escaped from Iran, I thought we were escaping from God. And so I wanted to have nothing to do with religion. And so even as a high school teenager in North America, I just tried to stay as far away from religion as I could. And then when I was 18 years old, a buddy of mine invited me to go to church with him, and I didn't want to go, but he named the 5 hottest girls from my high school and told me that they went, and I was motivated to visit. And so I went for the wrong reason, and God was bigger than that reason, right, Josh? And so, man, this church just started reaching out to me and started coming to my house with the Bible and opening it up and just sharing the gospel with me. And after about 2 months, I became a believer. And so I was 18 and 2 months old the night that the Lord saved me. And people always ask, they go, when did you know you were called? I think that night, as soon as I received the gospel, I just remember instantly, as soon as I got saved, or as soon as the Lord redeemed me, I just remember instantly, man, thinking, man, this is too good to keep to myself. I know friends who don't know what just happened to me. Not just so that they could know what happened to me, but I want to share with them. It was almost like I found a cure of the disease that all of my friends had, including me before conversion. And so for me, my calling was just driven out of a desire to see my friends receive the same Lord that I had received. And so nobody was putting a microphone, in my hand and saying, man, why don't you come speak? Or giving me a book deal. I just started going out and just telling my friends about Jesus. And then I started going to the Kentucky Fried Chicken and buying people meals. I'd go in the inner city and people were always broke looking for a little more change. And I'd say, hey, I'll buy you the big meal if while you're eating I get to share. And so the first 50, 60 times I shared the gospel, I wasn't getting paid to do it, man. I was paying people to do it. Yeah. And so I started just cutting my teeth and just carrying out the Great Commission, but I didn't have that fancy language. I just started sharing the gospel with people. And then a guy named Rick Stanley, who was Elvis Presley's stepbrother, all right, was an evangelist, and he came into our town, and he invited me to start traveling with him. And so I started traveling with him as his intern. Intern was a big fancy way of saying t-shirt salesman. So I sold t-shirts for this guy, and I sold books for this guy. And once in a while, he would just say, hey, David, come on up. And he'd give me the microphone and he'd say, man, why don't you just boast on the Lord? Talk about what God's done in your life. And so that's how I started speaking. And man, within 2 years, I was speaking to about a couple 100,000 people a year. And then within a couple of years past that, I was speaking to about 500,000 people a year. And then started feeling like God was calling me to put some stuff on paper. And, it's completely the work of the Lord. Yeah. But for all I know, man, I might not be called. I might get to heaven and God might go, I wanted you to be a florist. Well, hopefully not a florist, because no man should ever be a florist. But you know what I'm saying? Like, for all I know, I might get to heaven, man, and God might go, I really wanted you to be a banker. But for me,
no, florist is better.
No, thanks, man. But for me, it was. I know that I have a gift of persuasion. All my life, everybody told me you should be a lawyer, because you can kind of convince people. I got girls that were way hotter than me that go out with me. I was the guy who always spoke for the senior class, like, can we go and get this done or whatever. And so I always had the gift of persuasion. Right. And so when I became a believer, I feel like all of a sudden God had given me the most persuasive truth. And so I just started to use my giftings, everything that God had hardwired me for, and so much of it in the past was for my own gain, was used to manipulate and was used to, but then all those things are gifts become curse, on the other side. But then post salvation, God just began to give me favor and opened up doors. And so, and I really am like this incidental evangelist, and even the pastorate. I really just felt like 3.5, 4 years ago, that there was not a church in my city. We have 1,142 churches in the city of Birmingham. 1,100, huh?
How big is it? Like people?
About 1 million people. And we have 1,142 churches. We are the second most church city in North America. All right, so we are the buckle of the Bible Belt. And so, man, with all these churches, the weird thing was, bro, there was not one church in my city that I knew of that was intentional about diversity, was intentional about the poor and the rich, really had a vision to have in the same pew on a Sunday morning the homeless guy, the immigrant, and the soccer mom. And so we wanted a church. My son's from Guatemala. We adopted him when he was, 11. And so we wanted a church where my son could belong, where we didn't get him out of Guatemala just to bring him into a context of just a bunch of preppy, middle-class people. And so even in that church plant, it was just really birthed out of a desire to just be used in the kingdom. And so, for all I know, I might get to heaven and God might go, I never wanted you to plant a church. But I'd rather be wrong in that and just be driven by something that's redemptive truth. Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, in your understanding of the young adult culture and the vein that kind of runs through them, I don't know if Canada and the U.S. would be the same, but in our context, we've noticed that young adult generation, post-secondary, they're just not connecting with the church anymore. They're kind of falling away. Is that something you've noticed? And if it is, what do you think the reason is for it, and how do we get them back?
Oh, yeah, man. It's a complicated question. I think, first of all, I think, young at heart, meaning old wineskin, new wine. I know some 22-year-olds in my city who are just old wineskin. I mean, at the end of the day, I know 22-year-olds in my city who love traditional churchianity. They just love, like, their hobby is church. They want to volunteer for everything. They want to show up for everything. And they're 22. And I know some 65-year-olds who are disgruntled and they're over churched and they're just done. They're just done with building buildings. They're done with overstaffing. They just want to see the kingdom enhanced in a very different way. And so a bit of that is the new frontier of the kind of church plant that we are, for example. You know, we have a lot of people who have left the church where 85% of the budget goes into facility and staffing. But they haven't left the church. They're looking for a new kind of church, which is kind of funny because we're actually like the old kind of church. We're actually like the more Acts model kind of church where most of our budget goes into mission in our city. Most of our people, we call it just kind of an ordination of the body. You know, most of our people really feel called to get their fingernails dirty for mission. And so I think a lot of people, younger generation people, are just kind of disgruntled at church because, honestly, the reason they don't want to go to church is because they've already been. You know? And what they saw is a proclamation of this is supernatural. But yet they've gone a couple of times and they're like, you know what's really not happening there? Anything supernatural. You know? Just a bunch of guys in skinny jeans jumping around singing, you know, Hillsong songs. And then there's all this like talk about this movement of God. But at the end of the day, I still close my eyes and don't feel that different. And so what we do at Christ City Church, for example, is we just, when you come into our context and you're young, we just call your bluff. I mean, if you're like, I don't want to be about a corporate model of church, we're like, great, that's not us. Come on. You know, you hang out with us, in 2 weeks you're going to know a homeless guy. And you're going to win him to Jesus, and guess what? He's probably going to give you lice. It's impossible to exist in our church and probably not get lice. I mean, you just can't get around the kingdom and not smell like smelly people, right? And so you know, you get around our context, and it's hard to be cynical of weird religion. And I think a lot of people that are younger people, I'm talking about 24-year-olds, 26-year-olds, are kind of tired of churches fighting about secondary issues. You know, can we drink wine? Can we not drink wine? Can we speak in tongues? Can we not speak in tongues? They're just tired of all these secondary issues. And when they come into our context, they realize, man, we don't have time for secondary issues. I think a lot of churches have a lot of time to discuss secondary issues because they're not really fighting major wars. And so they got all this time laying around where they're just sitting around fighting secondary issues. We're so busy. I mean, fighting the major war. You know, when someone comes to Christ in our context, they typically cost around $2,000 because God saves their heart. But man, like, they got meth mouth. They can't, like, we go, let's go get you a job. They can't pass the urine test to get the job. You know, and so like everything's broken about this person's life. And so we're so busy doing the work of the gospel in the life of somebody that I don't care if this guy is a teetotaler or not. I don't care if this guy thinks it's okay for me to drink a glass of wine or not. He doesn't care if I'm speaking in tongues or not. We're putting away secondary issues so that we can kind of hone in on the primary issue, which is the gospel. And so I think a lot of people are leaving the church because they're seeing that the church is swinging at all the things that don't really matter, or they're building up things that don't really matter. And so you're just talking to a guy who's, by the way, I love the organized corporate big building church too. I'm a product of one. And I became a Christian at a church that was one of those churches. But at the end of the day, I kind of consider myself a child of the wilderness in that I feel like I came from Egypt, but I'm now like headed to the promised land, and I don't want to go back to Egypt, you know? And so I think God is raising up a new kind of church, which is actually the old kind of church where it looks like Acts 2, you know? And so, man, we double down on community in what we do. And so we really say that Sunday mornings are not the greatest expression of the church. Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, when you're in a circle instead of in rows, is the great expression. And I think that's why we retain a lot of younger people as well, because they're not just coming in a room, singing 3 Tomlin songs, listening to me preach for 45 minutes and going, that's Christianity. You know, they're actually in mission, in community, you know. There's incredible reward, man. Like, your life might be jacked up, but just come hang with us. You will find people, you'll go, at least, at least it's not here. And then you reach in and people just, and a lot of times, you're in the suburbs, you're begging people to show up for church, and you're competing with other churches that are building the Rainforest Cafe as their children wing, and everybody's just trying to outdo each other. In the hood, nobody shows up. So you just show up with a sandwich, and they come to church.
That's awesome.
Like you just wrap the gospel in a ham and cheese sandwich, and people just show up. So it's easy, you know what I mean?
That's awesome.
It's easy on the front end. You just pull the bus up, and the moms just throw their kids on the bus because they don't want them. And then the other side of it, though, is that but once they come to Christ, everything's broken. So that's where the real disciple making happens. And so, yeah, we don't really lose a lot of 22-year-olds, 24-year-olds. That's really who's coming by the droves to our church, because I think we're a church they're leading the more corporate model to come to the more organic model. So I don't know if that helps you understand, but yeah, for us.
That was phenomenal. That was phenomenal. That was awesome. Favorite part of the interview coming up right now. Although that was pretty close. This is my favorite part. It's the part where we go like rapid fire questions. I want to ask you a bunch of questions.
Yeah.
Quick. You got maybe 1 or 2 seconds to answer. And
whatever I answer.
Whatever you want.
Whatever I want to answer. Really? This is awesome.
This is great.
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're ready. You ready?
No, I'm ready, man.
Superman or Spider-Man?
Waffles.
Wendy's.
You said I can answer whatever I want, bro.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Wendy's or McDonald's?
Cheese.
Cardigan or tea?
Koreans.
Okay. Hipsters or
midgets? Next.
I don't even think we need to go any further.
Hipster midgets, man. Like tiny little midgets running around, kicking people, disgruntled,
This one's a
Instagramming everybody.
This one's a big one. Mustache or beard?
Oh my gosh, bro. The goatee. The goatee.
Good answer.
The mustache.
Good answer.
I have a rule. I never trust anyone with a mustache. Matter of fact, the shorter the mustache, the more evil. So, and then the beard, to me, I don't know about you, I don't know how you feel about beards, Josh, but to me, the beard is a front for something. I've never met a man with a beard who wasn't trying to hide something. You know what I'm saying? All right, so like to me, the beard's too much. You're covering up. The mustache is shorter, and so you take that and you keep going longer, and what you've got is what's the bearable goatee.
So what you're trying to say now is Jesus did not have a beard as depicted in all of the Christian tales that we've read and seen.
I don't think Jesus had a beard, man. I think he had a goatee.
Buddy, I'm with you on that one. Okay, let's keep moving along here. BlackBerry or iPhone?
iPhone.
Come on now. Okay, this is the important one. Breaking Bad's Walter White or Game of Thrones' Joffrey Baratheon?
Oh man, those are two of my favorite shows. Are you kidding me?
This is good. What's your answer? Is it gonna be?
I'd say. You need rapid. I'm sorry. Breaking Bad. Walter.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Last question. What is your hope for this generation?
Oh man. The gospel. I think that is Christ crucified, resurrected as the hope for this generation. So, hope in God, Christ, God. And so that's my hope for this generation, that they would come face to face with the gospel.
Come on. David Nasser, it has been my pleasure to sit and share with you. Thank you for being part of Fluid's 2014 Backstage. God bless you, brother.
Waffles.
Yeah.